Hey warriors, it's Bebe from Authenticity Warrior and I'm here. This is a story time. It was important to me to have this segment on our channel because I feel like as much as we can talk about some of these issues um, at like a higher level or with I guess more technical terms and things like that, I think sometimes what people just need to hear is just the gist, to have sister time to really get what it is that we're talking about here on our channel. And so for me, having this segment here, it helps me open up my life, to people so that they can, number one, see, have a mirror held up to them to see, what it is they also need to look into in their lives, to make sure that they too are not in positions where, they're being victimized and they don't even know it. Because I have to say that was me for the longest time. I was going through it, going through the ringer, and it took a while for me to clock what was happening to me. And I think it's because I really am, I was this like very, very innocent, I was such a Disney head, like happily ever after fairy tale, that was me. And so it took a while for me to see how dark, how dangerous the world really was. And it was even all the more heartbreaking to see it at the hands of someone that I actually fully trusted with my life. And, to have been harmed the way that I was, someone that I had offered up nothing but love to. It took a while. It took a while for me to look myself in the face and be like, this person that you attached yourself to seemingly for life is the one that is harming you right now. And they will kill you if you don't get out of here. And so, for me, this thing that I'm doing now is dear to my heart. And so I'm just going to open up to you guys. No holds barred here for me. Like, people who know me know I am very transparent about my life, and I intend to be that way here too as well. So come along for the ride. Where do I begin? Where does one really, really begin with these stories? How I knew my marriage was over. If I'm being very honest with you guys, this is a marriage that should have never even started in the first place. It's something that should not have begun. I had given almost 10 years of my life to this person. And from year one when I met this person, which was sometime in 2012, fresh out of uni, still very much bright, wide-eyed and bushy-tailed, up until 2020, which was, I would say, year 3 into my marriage with this person. I had already had 2 children. It was in this year 2020 where I think my spirit gave up the fight for this thing. It was at this point where I knew deep, 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 deep down in my gut that this thing not only could not work, but would never work. And in fact, had not been working for a very long time. I had put in everything that I could. Especially even with this person constantly sabotaging my efforts in this relationship. But it was in 2020 that I knew that no, it was done. It was also in this year 2020 that I, for the very, very, very first time, put pen to paper. And I said to myself, you are being abused. That was the most difficult thing I had ever written. I just could not, when you get to the point where you can't even lie to yourself. That's really what it was for me. And so, that was when I knew, ultimately, 2020, specifically February 2020. So, just to give like a very high level overview, because I would link the episode that delves deeper into this on here to this video, so you can listen to it because the podcast, it gets right into the details. So this is February 2020. Hey guys, I'm back. Sorry, I just had to take a moment to breathe, because since the podcast, I actually haven't said the story again. So this is ultimately a year later that I'm about to recount the story. So I had to pause because I wasn't sure I was ready, but I'm just going to have to get through it. So it's February 2020. I'm living and working in Nigeria. I have 2 young children. I'm still married. And if you guys remember 2020, it was like a hot year for the whole world. And I am working. I worked for a tech startup in Nigeria. And for those of you that know tech life, especially startup life, we already know the craziness about that. We know how trenches it really is. And so, I'm working. It's sometime around, 10 p.m. at night, still doing some work. I have my laptop open. I have all my devices around me. I'm just typing away, doing some work. Then my ex now, but my husband then, walks into the room. He says something to me. I'm just I think I mindlessly responded to him, or maybe I didn't even respond. I don't even remember the circumstances of what happened. And, I'm typing away, doing my work. He goes away and, I just continue. Then he comes back and, he says something to me again, and I respond, and, he goes off into a rage. And I'm like, Kilaju. I'll put the translation there for those of you that are in Yoruba. I'm like, I don't understand what's going on here. He starts screaming, that's just how you are. I'm talking to you, you're not listening to me. What kind of work are you even doing? How much are they even paying yourself? What kind of nonsense is this? You can't even answer a simple question, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, hold on. Like, I didn't hear you. You can see I'm working, I'm busy, I'm just trying to get this thing done before tomorrow. If you said something to me, if you asked me a question, repeat yourself now, answer. You can tell that I'm not being malicious in how I'm responding. I'm just fully occupied with what I'm doing. This guy is just going on and on. I can't even get a word in. And he is just raging and screaming and shouting. And I'm like, I take a good look at him. And then I see that this guy is holding a glass. And I was just like, oh my God, here we go again. This is some of the things that I definitely want to draw to you guys' attention. Number one, anybody who is very rageful, period. People who scream, who shout, who don't have any emotional regulation about themselves. You need to be very, very careful about those kinds of people. They are very abusive people. 2, people who struggle with their drinking. I'm sorry to say, but that is also a red flag in how they behave. It's even one thing. I know some people drink and then they get sleepy and then they go and sleep. You see those ones that get belligerent when they drink. Those are the ones you really, really need to be very careful for. Because in terms of your life being in danger, these are people that are unhinged when they drink. So, but of course, at the time, I didn't know any of this. I was just trying to be a peaceful character here. I didn't know that all of these things were putting me in serious danger. So he's screaming, he's raging, he's shouting. That's why you're like this. That's why you're like that. You're so stupid. You're so this. Calling me all sorts of names. And I'm still even waiting for him to even pause so that I can get an opening in to say, oh, I'm sorry, I apologize. I didn't hear you. I didn't hear what you said. I wasn't paying attention. And that's another thing that I feel so much. My heart really goes out to people who are being victimized in their relationships, in their marriages. When is their fault or when is not their fault? Or we're always just so quick to say sorry, just to keep the peace, just so that this man doesn't shout on me today, just so that I don't have to spend the entire time sitting in silence because somebody is giving me silent treatment, because someone is punishing me for one thing or the other. So even though I'm quite annoyed by this situation, I don't know the reason for this kind of anger. I don't know why I'm being treated like this, but I'm really just trying to just say sorry. I'm sorry. I apologize. I didn't mean blah, blah, blah. But this guy, I can't even get a word in. And that's how I know that, oh my God, I have entered it today. You know when you're being abused, there are just some ones that you just know that, I have entered it today. Like there's no coming out of it. You can tell that this person has targeted you and their anger is going to be unleashed on you, whether you like it or not. So I'm just watching this guy. He is screaming. He's raging at me. By this point, I've even sat up from the bed and I'm just watching this guy. I'm like, but I'm silent. I'm quiet because these are some of the things that you learn, some of the tactics that you learn. You learn, at least personally for me, I never match energy with energy. When somebody is on 10 like this, I bring my own energy down to a 0. If I can even bring it down to minus, I'll bring it down because I am just so scared. I don't want anybody to harm me. So this guy is going on and I'm sitting, I'm silent. I'm just looking at him, waiting for him to stop. And this guy doesn't stop. There's nothing this guy did not call me. The B word, the M word, the F word, even Yoruba curses. Olori burúkú ni ẹ́, kò ní dá fún ẹ, blah, blah, blah. Called me a monkey, just tried to denigrate me, my looks, my everything, just going on and on. And I know I'm a spiritual person. So as this guy is saying all these things to me, my spirit is trying to fight it off. I'm just trying to reject it in my head. I am just, when you're trying to just spiritually guard yourself, this guy is going on and on. I take a good look at looking past his face is the exit out of our room. And I'm doing calculations in my head. Can I run out of here? Can I get to my children's room? Will this guy follow me there? Will he beat me in front of them? These are the things that I'm calculating. Because even staying in this space is intolerable for me. But something just said to my spirit, don't even try it. Don't even get up from here. So I just sit there and I'm taking it. And I'm taking the abuse. I'm taking it. And for me, over the years, I had learned, at first I used to cry a lot. But over the years, I had learned that my tears were making him happy. So I had learned to hide, make sure that I don't cry. So I'm sitting there, I'm just looking at his face. And I'm emotionless, no tear coming from my eye. This guy is going on and on and on. I told you that at the start of this story, I told you the time was probably 10 p.m. I'm not joking, guys. By this point in time, it's probably midnight. So that's to tell you 2 hours of just the noise. By this point, when you're just even used to it by now. Because in the beginning, I used to be like, the neighbors, I'll be embarrassed that, oh my God, people can hear, and where we lived was a very communal space. So many neighbors, we lived in this very small, tiny backwater apartment somewhere. So there were so many neighbors, and I just used to be so embarrassed. Thank God, people be looking at me somehow, when they see me, kind of thing. But by this is 2020. How many times will somebody be embarrassed by this point in time? So 2 hours of just non-stop shouting, screaming is night. People are trying to sleep. This guy is still going. But I feel like there's something about the way that I am, that people that are abusive like them, they get even more aggravated when you are not matching their energy. So he saw he wasn't getting a rise out of me. And at this point in time, he then begins to touch me. So he's still calling me names. Then he starts pushing my head. Then he grabs my nose. Then he twists it and pushes my head. He does this thing 4 or 5 times. As he's still calling me names. This one, that one. He's saying it, he's manhandling my body. And at this point in time, I have to admit, this is when the tears started flowing, because in my head, I was just like, now he's touching me. Sometimes when the bar is just so low and it is in hell, sometimes you're like, at least he's not touching me. At least he's not touching me. But it is at this point in time that I start to say to myself, now he's touching me. Now he's touching me. And I'm repulsed completely by it. Because how when someone touches you, you can feel their print on you. The touch behind this it feels demonic to me. I am completely repulsed. And I am just weeping at this point. I am crying. Then the guy grabs his towel and he starts whipping me with it. That's stupid. You're this. You're that. That's why you're like this. And he keeps going. I don't think I've ever cried the way that I cried this night. He does all of this. Then I told you guys I was seated on the bed. He does all of this. Then he climbs onto the bed. He lies down and he passes out. In all this while when he was doing all of this, I thought that, okay, when this guy calms down, he will come down to his senses and he will realize that this was a massive overreaction. And maybe shame would catch him where he is and he would just immediately begin to beg. Because something similar has happened like this before, which is also on the podcast. And I believe this is probably episode 5 or episode 4. I'm not sure. Where I delve more into like all the physical abuse that I had endured. But something similar had happened in the past where he really went too far. This was when I was pregnant with my second child and he had physically restrained me. He himself knew he went too far. And immediately he dropped down. He just started to beg me. He was weeping. He was crying. And that really, really wore me down at the time. So this time I was thinking, no, this one that he has done is so bad. This is the worst I have ever experienced. I cannot even imagine that this guy will not be sorrowful at his actions. I was completely shocked when he climbed onto the bed and passed out. And in fact was snoring. That's when I said no. I said, my life. That's when I grabbed my phone. I started to document. I was writing from the top of the night to this point now that this guy was lying down snoring. It was probably around 1 a.m. or something. I said, I started to write it out. Every nasty word he called me. Everything he physically did to me. everything. I wrote it all out. But something, and this is why I'm just so proud of myself and probably many other women like me out there. At the end of everything that this guy did to me, everything, as soon as I documented everything, I put at the end a prayer for myself that, number one, you are loved by God, you are loved by your family, and you are loved by your friends. Everything this guy has said about you is a lie, and you are never to believe it. I prayed for myself and I prayed for my children and I kept it there. And I could not sleep, obviously. I was paralyzed by what happened to me. In fact, it's a night that I don't often go back to. Because honestly and truly, it is the most disgusting the most disgusting violation of my soul I've ever endured. And, but it is a night that I would say I am grateful for, because it was the first time that the scales fell from my eyes and I had to admit to myself the true gravity of the deep problem I had found myself in. And it was from that point on that I would say I began to fight for my soul. And as you guys know, I won. So, but yeah, ultimately that's when I knew my marriage had ended. I say this all the time, including on the podcast, and that was the beginning of the end. You know, it was when I just took my life back into my hands. I think it was later that year I cut my hair. You know, I started to, you know, I was giving distance to this guy. Before, when he would mess up and misbehave, I'll be the one trying to fix it, trying to fix us, trying to get us back together. No, I left this guy. Like, I focused on myself. I focused on my children. I focused on my job. And I just began to build myself back up together. You know, I got into therapy. I just started to remember who I am as a person, because I knew I deserved better. At this time, I didn't know if I'll be able to get out of the marriage. I didn't know how I could get out of the marriage. But I just said that I'm going to fight for myself and I'm going to fight for my children. However that looks like, I don't know. But, you know, and you know, sometimes he would still, you know, to be honest, it never got resolved. It's something that still just got swept under the carpet. It's something that his family manipulated me about, didn't let me tell my parents that this is what happened to me. Thank God I'd managed to tell a friend. But this guy had called up my friend, tried to slither his way, tried to change the narrative. But I'm just so grateful for the people that I have. My friend wasn't having it at all. Put that guy in his place. So, but I say all of this to say that, like, even though I was still struggling in the marriage, you know, I mentioned that I still got pregnant at the end of 2020 in December. I still got pregnant with my third child, you know, but I had begun to fight for my soul. And that ultimately is what culminated in what happened in November 2021, where I said enough is enough. It ends today. And yeah, so that's it. I know that I try to get deep into this story time, but I also know that you'll probably get more context and more information from the podcast, and encourage you to go there. But yeah, this is basically my story of how the fight for myself and my soul and my children and my family and even my loved ones, because my being alive, I can't imagine if my parents had to bury me. I can't imagine if my children were deprived of me, of my existence in this world. So I just encourage all my fellow warriors out there. It doesn't matter what your fight looks like. Some of you are still in these marriages that are harming you, but you are fighting in little ways for your soul. And I commend you seriously for that. keep doing it, keep doing it, keep doing it. You're chipping away at that block, and who knows, one day you may be free. You may be, if you just keep going. You know, some of us took that extra step and found a way to leave, and on our exit, we were punished for it. We were harmed even further for it. But we continue to remain in this fight. And I encourage us to continue. No matter the cost, continue. And, you know, unfortunately, my heart goes out to those who know people that they've lost in these kinds of harmful relationships. My heart goes out to them, but I promise you that there's nothing to be ashamed of for that person. That person fought as best as they could. And, you know, they may not be alive now, but trust me when I tell you that they tried their best. They did nothing wrong. All they did was love. And it is on these ogres who take someone's love, corrupt it, and weaponize it to harm and destroy the person that offered up that love. So we're all in this together, and we're going to keep fighting. And we've already won, and we will continue to win. So thank you guys very much for joining me for this story time. My warriors, my comrade in arms, you know, we're here and we're going to keep going. All right then. Bye guys.